You utterly reject that.
Yeah, there was
not what happened.
No, I was in the kitchen. There was no anger, no arguments, no shouting.
I just want to know how my daughter's doing. We're mucking about playing in the kitchen. And for some reason, this has gone really weird. Please, someone tell me. What's going on? There's mucking about in the kitchen. I don't understand how this is happening. Honestly.
You're watching Totally True Crime. Today's case is that of Scarlett Vickers. From the outside, it looked like it could be a tragic accident. The family at the centre of this case appeared to be so normal. The family we see every day. The family we live next door to. But the forensic evidence said otherwise. Scarlett was born to her parents, Simon Vickers and Sarah Hall, in 2010. She was born in Darlington, County Durham. It's in the northeast of England. The three of them lived together in their family home. And on the 5th of April 2024, their lives would change forever. It was a Friday night, and Simon had come home from work. He'd smoked some cannabis, and he'd also drank some wine, estimated to be at least 4 glasses. Scarlett was in her bedroom, doing typical teenage girl things, talking to her friends, playing games online. Sarah was in the kitchen cooking. Simon went to watch football on the television, and everything looked like a very typical Friday night. Simon went to join his wife in the kitchen, and at 10:15 p.m, Scarlett came downstairs and joined her parents. Sarah and Scarlett started to play fight. They started throwing grapes at each other, and Simon wanted them to stop. Sarah then grabbed the cooking tongs and pinched Simon on the bottom from behind. He turned around, and she then playfully grabbed his finger with them. Simon said, "Ouch," and his daughter playfully replied with, "Dad, don't be a wimp." Sarah was still cooking at this point, so she turned back around with her back to her partner and daughter while she was washing the pasta, and she heard Simon say to Scarlett, "How would you like it?" What happened next is something that only Simon and Scarlett truly know. Sarah heard her daughter let out a cry of pain. She turned around and could see that her daughter was injured. At first it was unclear what had happened. Scarlett started to move towards the back door, and then she collapsed. There was blood everywhere. Sarah frantically called 999, and she recalled Simon looking panicked. The paramedics arrived at 10:50 p.m. and immediately started to perform CPR on Scarlett. It was then discovered that Scarlett had been stabbed in the chest. The stab wound was on the left side of her chest, between her 5th and 6th ribs, and the wound was 11 centimetres deep. Scarlett had been wearing a fluffy nightdress, as well as a top and a bra, and the knife that had stabbed her had passed through all of these and into her heart. The paramedics tried desperately to save her, but an hour later, at 11:50 p.m, Scarlett was pronounced dead. PC Sarah Thompson had been on the scene straight away and asked the couple what had happened. Simon told her that they were, quote, mucking about. At this point, him and his wife were stood looking into the kitchen, and she ushered them into the living room. In her statement, Sarah said that she noticed Simon was highly intoxicated. He was slurring his speech, and he smelt strongly of alcohol. Simon and his wife Sarah were both taken into custody, and at the police station, Simon gave his account as to what had happened in those few seconds that Sarah had had her back turned, and Scarlett had ended up injured. Simon was checked into custody, and the camera from the police station picked up his first explanation of what had happened.
Is there anything else you can think of you need to tell us so we can look after you?
I just want to know how my daughter's doing. We're mucking about playing in the kitchen. And for some reason, this has gone really weird. I mean, we're mucking about. I can't believe this. I don't know what it is. It's just pointless. What? Please, someone tell me. What's going on?
the minute, mate, we've got no new information.
Well, I'll be a drunken area straight away, so I don't believe this happening. Well, sake, there's nothing about in the kitchen. I don't understand how this is happening, honestly.
In further police interviews, Simon gave different versions of his story. In one account, he said he'd stabbed Scarlett by accident. In another, he said he'd been throwing knives. And then in a third, he said he'd thrown another item that was either a spatula or tongs, and that he said Scarlett had then run towards him, stabbing herself in the chest with the knife. Finally, he settled on a version that said he had swiped the tongs off the kitchen surface and she'd ran into the knife that had protruded into her heart. But none of this fit with the evidence that the pathologist found. The stab wound was so deep that it would have had to have come from an arm that had been braced and a stabbing motion in order to have caused it. Crime scene investigators noticed that the knife on the side of the counter was still there when they arrived. Simon said he hadn't seen a knife being used that night, only when Sarah was chopping up onions. While Simon never said that he didn't cause the injuries to his daughter, he never gave a clear explanation as to how it occurred. He said, quote, "There is no way in the world I would stab my child. I threw those tongs at her. I want to die myself. My only child. I don't know what to say. I can't even cry. I don't even know what's gone wrong." While Simon and Sarah were being held in custody, Scarlett's friends and family were learning the devastating news of her passing. Crowds gathered in Darlington Park to honour her, with people carrying balloons and firing red and purple smoke into the sky. Scarlett's school, Houghton Academy, brought in experts to help students come to terms with the loss of their friend. A memorial tree was also unveiled in her memory. The week after Scarlett died, her parents appeared via video link at Teesside Crown Court. Sarah was bailed, and Simon was not. The following month, charges against Sarah were dropped, and Simon entered a plea of not guilty to both murder and manslaughter charges, meaning the case would now go to trial. The police looked further into Simon Vickers and who he was. He worked at the 3M manufacturing plant in a nearby town, and Scarlett was his only child. In 1993, when he was around 19 years old, he had been convicted of wounding with intent and sentenced to 2 years detention. He had slashed a man's face with a Stanley knife. There were some other minor offences on his record. They were labelled ones of dishonesty, but his last conviction had been in 1999, so for over 25 years he'd never been in trouble with the law. Sarah was also interviewed about her partner, and she made it clear from the start that she was going to stand by him. They'd been together for 27 years, and she said there had never been any domestic violence within their house. The trial was set for 2025, and the prosecution were leading the case with a charge for murder, not manslaughter. The jury heard evidence from Simon, who called himself, quote, "the unluckiest man in the world." Despite having a few different versions of events when he was in his initial police interviews, his version at trial was that he accidentally threw the knife at Scarlett during a kitchen play fight. An expert pathologist took the stand and said that the nature of the deep wound meant that it would have had to have been gripped and plunged into her chest. If it had been thrown, it would have rebounded off of her nightclothes. Remember, she had 3 layers on at the time. Simon then changed his version of events, suggesting that Scarlett could have accidentally walked into the knife after it, quote, hit the side of a hot plate and stuck out on the side of the counter after he had thrown it. He then incredibly offered up another version of events, saying, quote, "Scarlett was very proud of her hair. She had nice long hair and I started wafting it, but she started pushing me as I was trying to get to her hair. She was pushing me in the direction of where the tongs were. I put my hand on the tongs and swiped them along the kitchen worktop. They hit the corner of the hot plate, and that's why they flew off. He went on to say that he was going to pick up the tongs and chase his daughter with them, but as he attempted to grab them, they came out of his hand. These scenarios made no sense. The knife was the instrument that had caused the stab wound. The pathologist, Dr. Jennifer Bolton, argued that it would have been practically impossible and reiterated that the knife would have had to have been held in a braced position and plunged into Scarlett's chest to create the wound that was found on her body, the wound that killed her. Sarah, Scarlett's mother, gave evidence in the trial and said that as she was making spaghetti bolognese that night, she had turned around to wash the pasta, and that's when the tragedy occurred. She said that she didn't know what happened, but also that she didn't hear any anger from either of them, and that she would guess that Scarlett had gone to grab the tongs and run into the blade of the knife. She confirmed that she had been using the knife in her cooking, and she believed that it might have been caught underneath the granite chopping board that she was using, with the blade sticking out, and that's where she ran into it. Again, the pathologist said that this would not have inflicted Scarlett's fatal wound. The trial went on for 10 weeks, and after 13 days of deliberation, the jury returned a majority verdict of 10-2. Simon Vickers was found guilty of murder. The judge, Mr. Justice Cotter, said this at Simon's sentencing hearing.
You have been found guilty of the murder of your daughter, Scarlett Vickers, on the 5th of April 2024 in your family home. She was just 14 years of age, a normal, healthy young girl with a long life ahead of her when it was cut short by you. She died in the kitchen of her own home within minutes of having been stabbed. It went from an ordinary, happy family Friday night to tragedy within seconds due to what must have been your loss of temper. There is no other plausible explanation. You have never given a truthful explanation of what happened.
Simon Vickers was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Detective Superintendent Craig Rudd, who led the investigation, said this outside of court.
Scarlett Vickers would have celebrated her 16th birthday this year. She had a whole life ahead of her, yet it was cruelly cut short by her own father, a man who was meant to protect her. We may never know why or what caused Simon Vickers to do what he did that night, and sadly today's verdict will not bring Scarlett back, but he will now face the consequences of his actions.
A member of the public felt that that sentence was too lenient and asked for it to be reviewed. Upon review, it was decided that it wasn't, and his sentence wasn't increased or decreased. Sarah continues to mourn her daughter and to fight for her partner. She's working on an appeal, and she's got private investigator Jen Jarvie working pro bono on the case because she thinks this is a miscarriage of justice. Together, they're trying to get Simon's conviction overturned. In videos shared by Sarah, there are clips of Simon and Scarlett playing games together, racing each other on fairground dodgems, and sitting together at a wedding. She's made her support for her partner public, and she said this to ITV News.
During the sentencing, it was a flash of anger. You utterly reject that.
Yeah, there was
not
no-
what happened.
No, I was in the kitchen. There was no anger, no arguments, no shouting, nothing.
Your back was turned at the split second it happened.
Yeah, I didn't see what happened. I could hear. I can't accept it. As I say, I know he'll never harm her.
Other members of Simon's family and the wider community have expressed their support publicly for him too, claiming he would never deliberately harm his child. On social media, others have said that they think he's guilty. But amongst this debate, unlike with many other cases, the controversy has often overshadowed the loss of this young girl who had her whole life ahead of her. Sue Gill, the principal at Houghton Academy, where Scarlett was a pupil, said, quote, "Scarlett was always immaculately turned out, respectful and polite. She was a very friendly girl with a great sense of humour. She was popular with her friends, and she will greatly be missed by everyone at school. This is a very difficult time for all of us, but we know we can get through it by coming together as a strong community and by remembering Scarlett in our own ways." Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, please subscribe for more weekly true crime videos like this. You've been watching Totally True Crime.